Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Nub Plays here, and let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into the top 10 most dangerous countries in the world. These rankings are based on hard data, crime rates, political instability, ongoing conflicts. This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. Because knowledge is power, people. But the reality is, danger exists. Understanding these realities is crucial. Buckle up, because some of these stories are heavy. All right, let's jump into it. Syria has been ravaged by civil war for over a decade. Imagine living in constant fear where going outside could mean getting caught in the crossfire. Millions have been displaced, families torn apart, and innocent lives lost. The war started in 2011 during the Arab Spring uprisings. People protested against President Bashar al-Assad's regime. The government responded with brutal force. Now, multiple factions are vying for power: rebels, government forces, ISIS. And the worst part, there's no end in sight. Next up is Afghanistan, a country that's been making headlines for all the wrong reasons lately. We all remember the chaotic withdrawal of US troops and the Taliban's swift takeover. The Taliban promised a more moderate rule, but the reality is different. Human rights abuses are rampant, especially against women and girls. They've been stripped of their basic freedoms, education, work, even the right to leave their homes without a male guardian. And let's not forget about the constant threat of violence. Afghanistan is a powder keg right now. South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, is sadly also one of its most dangerous. Since gaining independence from Sudan in 2011, the country has been plagued by civil war and ethnic violence. It's a complex conflict with a long and bloody history, rooted in power struggles, ethnic tensions, and access to resources. Imagine a country where millions are on the brink of starvation, where access to clean water and healthcare is a luxury, and where children are forced to become soldiers. That's the reality in South Sudan. The conflict has created a massive humanitarian crisis, with millions displaced and in desperate need of aid. But getting aid to those who need it most is incredibly dangerous. Aid workers are often targeted, and humanitarian convoys are attacked. The level of lawlessness and impunity is staggering. It's a country where violence can erupt at any moment, and where simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time can have deadly consequences. Chapter 4, Iraq, still haunted by ISIS. Iraq, a country forever scarred by war and instability. While the defeat of ISIS in 2017 was a major turning point, the country is still grappling with the aftermath. Years of conflict have left their mark with widespread destruction, displacement and trauma. And while ISIS may no longer control territory in Iraq, they remain a potent threat. They've gone underground, carrying out sleeper cell attacks and bombings, keeping the population on edge. The fear is palpable. On top of that, Iraq is plagued by corruption, political instability, and sectarian violence. The government is struggling to provide basic services, and the economy is in shambles. It's a volatile mix that makes Iraq a dangerous place for locals and foreigners alike. Traveling outside of heavily fortified areas is incredibly risky, and even then, there are no guarantees. The threat of terrorism, kidnapping, and random acts of violence is ever present. Chapter 5. Somalia, Piracy, and Terror on the High Seas. Somalia, a country synonymous with piracy and terrorism. Located on the Horn of Africa, Somalia has been mired in chaos and violence for decades. The central government has been weak and ineffective, allowing various factions, including Islamist militant groups, to seize control of different parts of the country. Piracy off the coast of Somalia has been a major concern for years, disrupting international shipping and costing the global economy billions of dollars. Armed Somali pirates, often operating from small, fast boats, hijack cargo ships and take the crew hostage, demanding huge ransoms. And then there's Al-Shabaab, the Somali-based terrorist group linked to Al-Qaeda. They control large swathes of the country, imposing their strict interpretation of Islamic law and carrying out deadly attacks in Somalia and neighboring countries. They target civilians, government officials and foreign aid workers spreading terror and instability. Chapter 6. Central African Republic, a cycle of violence. The Central African Republic, a country trapped in a cycle of violence and instability. Since gaining independence from France in 1960, the CAR has been plagued by coups, rebellions and civil wars. Rich in resources like diamonds and timber, these have fueled conflict. The government has little control outside the capital, Bangui. Armed groups commit widespread human rights abuses. The humanitarian crisis is one of the worst in the world. Chapter 7. Yemen, a forgotten war. Yemen, a country ravaged by what many call the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Since 2014, Yemen has been embroiled in a brutal civil war, pitting the Yemeni government, backed by a Saudi-led coalition, against Houthi rebels who control much of the north. The conflict has its roots in a complex web of political, sectarian and economic grievances. The Saudi-led coalition has carried out a relentless bombing campaign, targeting Houthi positions but often hitting civilian infrastructure like hospitals, schools and markets. The Houthis, in turn, have fired missiles into Saudi Arabia and laid siege to cities, depriving civilians of food, water and medicine. The humanitarian cost of the war has been catastrophic. Millions are on the brink of famine, diseases like cholera are rampant, and the healthcare system has collapsed. Yemen is a country on the verge of total collapse, and the international community seems powerless to stop it. Chapter 8. Libya, a nation divided. Libya, a country struggling to emerge from the shadow of dictatorship and civil war. Since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya has been mired in chaos and violence. Rival governments, backed by different militias and foreign powers, have been vying for control, turning the country into a battleground. The lack of a central authority has created a security vacuum, allowing militias, criminal gangs, and terrorist groups to flourish. These groups profit from smuggling, human trafficking, and extortion, further destabilizing the country. For ordinary Libyans, life is a daily struggle. Basic services like electricity and water are unreliable, the economy is in shambles, and crime is rampant. Leaving your home can be a life or death decision. Libya is a country crying out for peace and stability, but the path forward remains elusive. Chapter 9. Nigeria, battling Boko Haram and more. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, is grappling with a multitude of security challenges. From the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast, to farmer-herder clashes in the Middle Belt, to kidnappings for ransom in the south, violence has become a tragic part of life for many Nigerians. Boko Haram, whose name roughly translates to Western education is forbidden, has been terrorizing northeastern Nigeria for over a decade. They're notorious for their brutality, kidnapping schoolgirls, bombing mosques and churches, and displacing millions. While the Nigerian military, with the help of regional forces, has made some progress against Boko Haram in recent years, the group remains a potent threat. They continue to carry out deadly attacks, exploiting the poverty and marginalization that plague the region. Chapter 10. Venezuela, a descent into chaos. Venezuela, a country once blessed with vast oil wealth, is now mired in a political, economic and humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. Years of mismanagement, corruption and socialist policies have brought the country to its knees. Hyperinflation has rendered the currency practically worthless. Food and medicine are scarce, and basic services have collapsed. The crisis has sparked mass protests and a brutal crackdown by the government. Security forces have been accused of using excessive force, arbitrary detentions and torture. The justice system is compromised and impunity reigns supreme. Venezuela has become a case study in how quickly a country can unravel. What was once one of South America's wealthiest nations is now a cautionary tale of economic collapse, political repression and humanitarian disaster. So there you have it, the top 10 most dangerous countries in the world right now. It's a sobering list, a stark reminder of the challenges and dangers that exist in our world. But it's important to remember that these rankings don't tell the whole story. Behind the headlines and statistics are real people living through unimaginable hardship and resilience. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of suffering, but we can't turn away. We have a responsibility to stay informed, to educate ourselves about these crises, and to support organizations working to make a difference. If you found this video informative, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And most importantly, stay safe out there. Peace out.